Hello everyone, I am Dr. Revati, consultant ophthalmologist at Smart Vision Eye Hospitals, Hyderabad. Today we have a unique discussion regarding the most common disease, diabetes. Since diabetes affects multiple organs in our body, it's very important to create awareness among the common public about this disease. We are fortunate to have with us eminent multi-specialist doctors for the discussion. The panel consists of Dr. Sheetal Kumar, consultant diabetologist at Global Hospitals Lakdi Kapul, Dr. Santosh Hedao, consultant nephrologist from Care Hospitals Banjara Hills, Dr. C.H. Ratnakishore, consultant neurologist, head of the department neurology at City Neuro Center, and Dr. Brindavani, consultant dietitian at Rainbow Hospitals, and of course, my colleague, Dr. Nilanjana Deb, who is a retina and glaucoma specialist at our hospital. Dr. Sheetal Kumar, it's nice to have you with us here in the meet. Firstly, I would like to ask, does having diabetes, whether I'm at risk for other medical problems also?
Yes, having diabetes increases the risk of other medical conditions, other medical problems and complications. As diabetes is mainly related to uncontrolled sugar secondary to either insulin deficiency or insulin resistance, all these will lead to damage to the eye in terms of diabetic retinopathy, development of glaucoma and cataract, and involvement of kidney with diabetic nephropathy due to damage to the blood vessels, and involvement of peripheral nerves leads to pain, numbness, and the wounds go unnoticed and may lead to increased infection and gangrene. There is increased risk of stroke, cerebrovascular accidents, transient ischemic episodes, and cognitive impairment if brain is involved, and increased risk of coronary artery disease like MI. That is also because of involvement of blood vessels secondary to the insulin resistance and uncontrolled sugars. And peripheral vascular disease is a major component, and that is because of contraction of the blood vessels leading to decreased blood supply to the peripheries, and leading to wound healing will be delayed.
Thank you, doctor. That's an informative answer. Do you also advise your patients regularly to see the other multi-speciality doctors like an eye doctor?
Type 1 diabetic patient has to visit eye specialist within 5 years of diagnosis, and every year after that on regular basis. And type 2 diabetic patients has to visit eye specialist as early as possible after diagnosis, because they may present with the diabetic retinopathy and other complications at the time of diagnosis only, and every yearly after that, and more frequently if at all they have been diagnosed with complications of diabetes in the eye.
People with diabetes, we do see they check themselves and usually they alter their medications all by themselves. How often do you think that the people should get their blood sugars checked, and if it's too low or too high, how do they actually proceed with, and how do they actually maintain the desired levels of the blood sugar?
Checking your blood sugar levels will depending upon the sugar levels at the time of diagnosis. For outpatient basis, in type 2 diabetic patients, you have to consult your specialist on monthly basis, or if your sugars are under control, on second or third monthly basis. And if your sugar levels are very high, which is called hyperglycemia, in that case you have to consult your doctor immediately. And in case of sugars are very low, that is called hypoglycemia, you have to take sugar containing or glucose containing foods immediately, which has to be kept handy.
Good suggestions, Dr. Sheetal Kumar. So, do we have any new medications to help manage the treatment of diabetes?
Lifestyle modifications play an important role in diabetic management. Increased physical activity and strict diet control are very important. And apart from regular medication like metformin, sulfonylureas, and alpha glucosidase inhibitors, advanced drugs are also available. DPP-4 inhibitors are a type of drugs which mainly can prescribe for obese diabetic patients, because which are weight neutral, and sometimes with metformin combination they will reduce the weight also. And SGLT2 inhibitors act by a different mechanism. They will remove the excess sugars via kidney, and they have an advantage of reduction of weight. So preferably we can use those drugs in obese diabetic patients. And coming to insulins, advanced insulin preparations are also available nowadays. They are mainly for preventing the complications like hypoglycemia.
Dr. Ratnakishore, it's a pleasure to have you here with us. Firstly, I would like to ask when a patient with diabetes would need a neurology consultation.
Patients with the diabetes, most common problem is diabetic neuropathy. Usually the patients will have symptoms of numbness, tingling sensation, burning sensation in the legs and hands. Sometimes they do have what we call cotton wool sensation. When they walk on a floor and all, they'll not be able to feel the feet, and they'll be as if they are walking in the wool or on a bland surface, like that they feel. Once these symptoms are there, we call it as a diabetic neuropathy. So patients with these symptoms of diabetic neuropathy needs to be consult a neurologist.
What do you think are the most common signs of diabetic neuropathy?
Basically, to rule out, there are 2 or 3 types of diabetic neuropathy. So normal diabetic neuropathy is what we call it as a sensory diabetic neuropathy or axonal diabetic neuropathy, which is causes only tingling, numbness sensation. It can start even as early as within 1 year of diabetes, or it can go even after 5, 6 years of even after the starting of diabetes.
How do you usually manage and treat a patient with diabetic neuropathy?
Patients who have difficulty in walking, when they start having a difficulty in walking, when they have a loss of motor power, so what we call when they have a difficulty in getting up and then putting their feet in the floor, or when they slip the chappals from their feet. So such symptoms occur, usually we have to see as early as neurologist, because there are different types of diabetic neuropathy, like diabetic chronic what we call chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy is one of the complications of diabetes. Such patients need to have it treated aggressively with the medications so that they will not further deteriorate and then have what we call motor symptoms.
Does presence of neuropathy indicate higher risk for other comorbidities as well?
And patients with the diabetic neuropathy, if they have these symptoms, they are more prone for developing other comorbidities, basically diabetic retinopathy, diabetic nephropathy usually. So the common pathway for all these things is microvascular damage, what we call microangiopathy. So which is a common pathway for all these damaging these end organs. When such patients have a diabetic neuropathy, they are better to have screened for the retinopathy and also for their kidney function, so that we can diagnose them earlier and prevent their complications and comorbidities.
Dr. Santosh, welcome to this meet. Firstly, I would like to ask, how do you think that diabetes damages the kidneys?
Yeah. So diabetes is one of the leading cause of kidney disease. Diabetes affects kidney in various ways. Basically, kidneys are filters. So diabetes causes damage to the blood vessels of this filter, and basically this filter starts leaking protein. This protein starts coming in urine, and when this is continued for a long time, in a long run it damages the kidney filters and slowly causes CKD. Diabetes also causes recurrent urine infection in diabetes, and because of this, kidney damage happens over a period of time slowly and they develop CKD.
Dr. Santosh, could you suggest us ways to prevent and delay the onset of diabetic kidney disease?
The mainstay of avoiding diabetes related kidney disease is to have regular screening before the onset of disease and regular follow-up once the disease has started, so that we can stop the progression. The screening can be done very easily with simple urine examination, in which we can check urine for protein leak, and there is a blood test, creatinine, which is basically done to see the filter function of the kidney. So if these tests start showing abnormality, we have to go to a nephrologist and have a regular follow-up. The regular follow-up for different stages of CKD is different, but most of the patients follow at the interval of 3 to 6 months. In this time, we usually check for their proteinuria as well as their kidney function, which is basically a filter function. The other thing what we can do is to have a basically very strict diabetes control as well as hypertension control. This still remains the mainstay of treatment. Other than this, we have lifestyle modification, reduction of weight, doing regular exercise, stopping smoking, and don't indulge in over the counter medicines, mainly painkillers. So these painkillers and other medicines which are easily available over the counter can additionally damage the kidney other than diabetes and can increase the risk of CKD for you.
So, Dr. Santosh, do you think the patients can identify the early onset of diabetic kidney disease? There are any kinds of symptoms or signs so that they come to us early?
Yeah. So unfortunately, most of the patients, when they develop signs of kidney disease, we are already late, because in early stages we usually do not get the signs of kidney disease. We get kidney patients in CKD stage 3 or 4 when they start developing complications, but still we need to do screening to pick up the disease early so that we can control it and we can prevent the further progression. The early signs of disease what we get is commonly swelling in the legs. So it starts with legs. Over a period of time it gradually increases to upper part of the body also. Slowly over a period of time they complain of decrease in urine quantity, and when this swelling increases and water collection happens in lungs, they complain of breathlessness. The other complications of CKD is low hemoglobin. So they develop weakness, tiredness, easy fatigability, they develop bone pains, they develop irritability, they develop skin itching. All these are complications of increased urea and creatinine and other toxins in these patients.
That was a wonderful explanation for the previous question. And can you also tell us how a kidney failure develops and how it can be treated?
Yeah. So basically kidney disease treatment for diabetes is divided into two parts. As I discussed, when you don't have a disease, do screening. When you get a disease, do a regular follow-up and reduce or decrease the progression of the disease. The next part is when you develop end stage disease. So despite of everything or late pickup, we develop end stage renal disease. In this stage we are left up with only two options, either dialysis or transplant. The dialysis is of two types. One is hemodialysis, which has to be done in hospital 3 times a week, and the other is peritoneal dialysis, which is basically meant for ambulatory young patients which they go for work and they are students mainly, so they can do it at home on their own, no need to come to hospital. The other is hemodialysis, as I told, and next is kidney transplant. So basically kidney transplant is a very good option, and now the success rate is almost 95 to 99%, but we need a suitable donor as well as a suitable recipient for the same. Thank you.
Dr. Brindavani, it's a great pleasure to have you with us. Since diet is very crucial in diabetes and people do have lots of confusion of what to eat, so your session would be a great help for us. So we'll start with the first question for you. What are the types of foods to be eaten when you have diabetes and how much should we eat?
Diabetic diet is a balanced diet where we have 5 food groups here. We have grains, legumes, green leaf vegetables, and protein foods, and then fruits. When you come to grains, the grains are kind of not highly polished and should have complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates means the glucose release from the grain is much slower, and unrefined cereals like when you have a brown rice or whole wheat or quinoa, these kind of grains, the glucose release is slower, and the fiber content of the grain also maintains the glucose levels. When you take legumes like peas, beans, they have high fiber content, and also they are complex in carbohydrates, and they also support the protein in the diet here. When you talk about greens in a diabetic diet, all kinds of greens are very helpful. The quantity of the greens to be taken in the diabetic diet can be kind of unmeasured, because greens are quite low in carbohydrates and they're high in micronutrients, so there's no need to be cautious about how much of green leafy vegetable one has to take. When it comes to protein, generally type 2 diabetes have a little bit of problems in their lipid profile, like high cholesterol or LDL or lower HDL levels. So try taking non-veg protein or kind of vegetarian protein, which is not in a high fat content. For example, paneer has a high fat content, and meats have a lot of fat content. So you can consider lean meats and egg whites and fish for non-vegetarian sources, and you can consider bean and kind of low fat curd for the protein sources in a vegetarian diet. Coming to the fruit, I think around 100 grams of a fruit a day is much beneficial for a type 2 diabetes. Trying to choose low carbohydrate fruits and high fiber fruits are always helpful for the type 2 diabetes.
Since carbohydrates are a regular integral part of an Indian diet, so how do I count my carbs and how much of actual carbs to be eaten per day?
The two types of carbohydrates which are found in foods are sugars and starches. The natural sugars which are found in milk and fruits. The sugar from the milk is called as a lactose, and the sugar from the fruits is called as a fructose. Coming to the carbohydrates known as starches are found in beans and grains and vegetables. The nature of the starch is we need to choose complex starches, which are whole grains and whole legumes, and few of the vegetables do have complex starches. How much of carbohydrate to be taken in the diabetic diet is also mentioned as serves. So 15 grams of a complex carbohydrate or a carbohydrate is called as a serve. So per a meal, I think 1.5 serves of carbohydrate gives a good glycemic index, and including a lot of green leafy vegetables with every meal tries to improve the glycemic control in the diet.
The previous explanation is quite useful even for us who are non-diabetics. And going to the next question, people usually say that, doctor, I practically eat nothing, but still my blood sugars are quite high. How can this happen?
Many feel that I have not eaten for 24 hours or I've been fasting for 1 or 2 days, but my sugars are very high. That means the body tries to maintain its glucose levels by alternative mechanisms, by protein breakdown or fat breakdown. So a balanced diet is very important for a diabetic patient, but not fasting to lower the blood sugar levels.
Dr. Brindavani, how do you think we should adjust our meals in special situations like when people who exercise a lot or in pregnancy and sickness, especially in this COVID scenario?
We definitely need to adjust the nutrients for situations like exercise, pregnancy, and any kind of illness or COVID pandemic situation. The nutrients which are best helpful for exercise period are the proteins, where we can use egg whites or a casein protein from paneer or a whey protein from curd and thick buttermilk. In pregnancy, a caloric dense diet is very important for diabetic patients, because we need to support an additional 300 to 500 calories as a pregnancy cost for a pregnant lady. So these could be given as a protein and a carbohydrate combination. That means a protein from a whey protein or an egg white protein or a casein protein, along with a carbohydrate which is complex in carbohydrates and high fiber foods also. That would mean we could include beans and egg whites or beans and paneer together for each meal, so that the caloric density of the meal increases and not disturbing the glycemic level, or not disturbing the blood sugar levels, and also supporting the protein for the fetal growth. When coming to stressful situations like COVID pandemic, in these situations we need a protein which is easy to digest. Could be a milk protein or a curd protein or an egg white protein. Beans could be a little gassy in situations like when you have fever or your temperatures are high. So something like soup, I mean non-vegetarian soups are best beneficial. But coming to a vegetarian diet, I think a blended bean protein could be best. Like for example, you can boil your beans and blend them with the vegetables, so they're easy to digest. So just making a modification in the kind of digestibility of the bean could be helpful in situations where the body is under stress with fever or any other kind of in digestive issues that way.
In vegetarian people, what do you think? Do you have any new ideas to include in their diet plan, especially for breakfast, lunch, dinner, as well as light snacks? Do you think you can suggest any new ideas?
New ideas to incorporate in a diabetic diet could be combination of foods. For example, we are habitually used for just having a breakfast and a tea, or just lunch and buttermilk. But if you try to incorporate 3 food groups or 4 food groups in a diabetic vegetarian diet, it's much more beneficial. Like you can have a cup of curd and a cup of beans and a small breakfast and a salad and maybe a lemon water. So combination of foods and combination of food groups would make your meal interesting, and also you don't feel bored and you don't feel that you're on a diabetic diet, but it'd be much interesting to have kind of 3 or 4 food groups or a combination of recipes together to make the vegetarian diabetic diet interesting.
It gives me immense pleasure to welcome Dr. Neelanjana Dev. So, ma'am, firstly, I would like to ask what are the early symptoms and when should a patient with diabetes visit an eye doctor?
Diabetes can affect multiple organs of the body, including the eye. And in the eye, it can affect the lens or the small vessels of the eye at the back in the retina, thereby causing loss of vision. But if diagnosed early and treated timely, the loss of vision can be prevented. So every diabetic patient, whenever they're diagnosed with the disease, should undergo a comprehensive eye examination, including a dilated retinal examination. Apart from diabetes, patients who have coexisting conditions like hypertension, high cholesterol, anemia or kidney disease, are pregnant or are addicted to smoking, have a higher risk of developing diabetic eye disease. So they should also undergo a comprehensive examination. And children and young adults who develop diabetes, known as type 1 or insulin dependent diabetes, also should have eye examination at the onset.
So, I do agree with you, Dr. Neelanjana. And can you also elaborate on how does diabetes affect our vision and what are the early symptoms?
Diabetes can cause loss of vision in multiple ways. High blood sugar can cause clouding of the natural lens, this is called cataract, and cause symptoms like blurring of vision or glare. If the small blood vessels of the back of the eye, that's in the retina, are affected, this causes leakage of blood and fluid, and this is called diabetic retinopathy and can cause symptoms like a distortion of vision or gaps in the field of vision, or it can cause floaters, and this can also lead to drop in fine vision. In more advanced cases, the blood vessels can grow on the surface of the retina and can cause bleeding and retinal detachment. So these conditions can cause sudden drop in the vision. Diabetic patients are also at a higher risk of developing glaucoma. That is a condition which is characterized by damage to the optic nerve due to high fluid pressure inside the eye. So this can be completely asymptomatic in the beginning, and slowly the vision loss starts in the periphery and gradually encroaches into the central field, causing permanent loss of vision. In acute cases where the eye pressure rises suddenly, the patients may have symptoms like headache, cloudiness of vision, or watering eyes.
With the rapid advancement in technology, can you also tell us what are the different tests used to detect early diabetic eye disease?
Diabetes-related eye disease can be diagnosed by a comprehensive eye examination, which includes a slit lamp examination to rule out cataract, measurement of the eye pressure by applanation tonometry, gonioscopy, and optic disc evaluation can rule out glaucoma. Once the diagnosis is suspected, more tests can be performed like visual fields, glaucoma osity, and central corneal thickness. And dilated retinal examination by indirect ophthalmoscopy can detect retinopathy, which can be further confirmed by tests like fluorescein angiography and retinosity.
Dr. Neelanjana, can you enlighten us the treatment options for diabetic retinopathy and also any recent advancements in the treatment options?
Diabetic retinopathy can be treated by medications, lasers, and surgery. So medications include anti-VEGF, that is anti-vascular endothelial growth factor. These are factors which stimulate the formation of new blood vessels. So these can be inhibited by injection of drugs like ranibizumab, aflibercept, or bevacizumab inside the vitreous cavity. And laser treatment is used to seal the leaking blood vessels, and they can also cause shrinkage of the blood vessels of the retina to reduce the bleeding. So these treatment can require multiple sessions depending on the condition of the disease. And surgery called vitrectomy is necessary in advanced cases where there is a bleed inside the eye or a tractional retinal detachment. So this surgery involves the removal of the blood clot and the jelly of the eye, and removal of the scar tissue, doing laser intraoperatively, and injection of gas or oil to flatten the retina.
So, knowing about treatment options available, what do you think the general public should do to prevent the diabetic retinopathy and prevent blindness?
Blindness due to diabetes is the most common cause of preventable blindness in the working age population and is rapidly emerging as a major public health problem in India. But blindness due to diabetes can be prevented by timely diagnosis and regular follow-up and dilated eye examination every year or more frequently as advised by the eye doctor. Apart from this, good sugar control, BP and cholesterol control, and if there are additional comorbidities like kidney disease or neurological problems, they also need to get rest. And last but not the least, healthy diet, regular exercise, avoidance of smoking can go a long way to maintain good eye health.
That was a wonderful session. So, from what we learned today from all our experts, I feel having diabetes is not the end of the world. In spite of it, we can lead a happy and healthy life. We need not feel deprived. With proper attention, diet, and regular follow-ups, we can safely tackle diabetes. My sincere thanks to all the speakers and thanks to the audience for patience listening. Thank you very much.